event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
African leaders have congratulated the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, for the exceptional success achieved by the African Peer Review Mechanism under his presidency. The 38th Ordinary Session of the African Union Summit held in Addis Ababa has wound up with the adoption of several reports, decisions and declarations. The African Heads of State and Government meeting in Addis Ababa as part of the 38th Summit meeting of the African Union have rejected as a blatant violation of international law any proposal or attempt aimed at displacing the Palestinian people from its homeland. Those were the major developments. Now the full news edition. Good afternoon. The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has offered his condolences to the family of the veteran and friend of the Algerian Revolution, Félix Louis Giraud Colliosi, who passed away at the age of 95. The President said late Félix Louis Giraud joined the Glorious Liberation Revolution a day after its outbreak as an activist and war veteran, given that he was convinced of the French injustices and the struggle of the Algerian people against colonial domination, enduring the torments of the prisons of Serqadji, Lambis and those of France. Algeria, which had chosen and his country of residence, welcomed him and granted him citizenship, allowing him to occupy important positions within national institutions with pride and dignity. The President also offered his sincere condolences to other war veterans who were by his side in the fight for freedom. The Prime Minister, Mr. Nader Arbaoui, has chaired a meeting of the State's Participations Council devoted to the continued transfer of assets confiscated as part of the fight against corruption to the benefit of public institutions and bodies, during which the emphasis was placed on speeding up the optimal exploitation of the production units transferred. During the meeting of the 193rd session, Mr. Arbaoui stressed the need to speed up the measures required to ensure that the production units transferred to the benefit of the national community are used to the full in accordance with the directives of the President of the Republic. The African leaders have congratulated the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, for the exceptional success achieved by the African Peer Review Mechanism, APRM, under his presidency. The details in this report by Assia Bakar.
The Assembly commended what it described as the excellent leadership of President Tebboune, stressing that an exceptional success was achieved by the mechanism under his leadership. The AU heads of state and government also congratulated the President of the Republic for his enlightened leadership of the APRM and his unwavering commitment to promoting democracy and good governance on the continent. They also expressed great appreciation of the voluntary contribution to the APRM of $1 million made by the President of the Republic, hailing his firm commitment to ensure the full ownership of the APRM by member states. Earlier, the Executive Director of the Continental Secretariat of the African Peer Review Mechanism, Marie-Antoinette Roscatre, expressed her immense gratitude to Algeria for this contribution to support the mechanism, saying that this gesture reflects Algeria's unwavering dedication to African unity and cooperation.
The 38th Ordinary Session of the African Union AU Summit held in Addis Ababa has wound up with the adoption of several reports, decisions and declarations. The details in this report by Masoud Sharfi.
The two-day summit held under the theme Justice for Africans and People of African Descent Through Reparations helped define Africa's priorities for 2025 and beyond, as well as the mechanisms for implementing the 2063 Agenda. The summit was marked by the election of the President of the AU Commission, the Djiboutian Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, replacing the previous Chadian President Moussa Faki Mohamed, as well as the election of the Algerian ambassador to Ethiopia and permanent representative to the AU, Ms. Malika Haddadi, as a vice president for the Commission after obtaining a landslide victory over her Moroccan rival. During the session, Algeria also announced a voluntary financial contribution of $1 million to support the African Peer Review Mechanism, APRM, a memorandum of understanding on the voluntary financial contribution to promote good governance in Africa was signed by the Secretary of State to the Minister of Foreign Affairs in charge of African Affairs, Salma Bakhta-Mansouri, and the Executive Director of the APRM Continental Secretariat, Marie-Antoinette Rose Quatre.
A memorandum of understanding on Algeria's $1 million contribution to the African Peer Review Mechanism, APRM, to promote good governance in Africa was signed in Addis Ababa by the Secretary of State to the Foreign Affairs Minister in charge of African Affairs, Salma Bakhta-Mansouri, and the Executive Director of the APRM Continental Secretariat, Marie-Antoinette Rose Quatre, on the sidelines of the 38th African Union Summit. The details with Masoud Sharfi.
On the occasion, the Secretary of State reiterated Algeria's commitment as a founding member of the APRM and under the good leadership of the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, to re-establish the mechanism in order to meet the challenges of governance in Africa. Recalling the $1 million voluntary financial contribution, Ms. Mansouri stressed the country's hope that it will serve as a concrete expression of the decision to support the mechanism.
The decision taken by the President of the Republic to support African mechanisms, particularly those concerned with good governance and strengthening the foundations of democracy in the African continent, is an implementation of his instructions aimed at restoring Algeria's leading position in Africa. We hope that this voluntary financial contribution will serve as a concrete expression of the decision to support this mechanism and will also encourage member states to submit their periodic reports, exchange expertise in the field of good governance, and promote the activation of democratic principles across the continent.
Expressing her immense gratitude to Algeria for its decision to make a voluntary contribution in support of the APRM, Ms. Rose Quatre stressed that the gesture reflected Algeria's unwavering commitment to African unity and cooperation. According to Ms. Rose Quatre, the Algerian government's contribution to the instrument will certainly enable the APRM to fulfill its mandate and achieve tangible results.
Meanwhile, a high-level discussion was held under the theme Mobilizing African Investment and Financing for the implementation of the 2063 Agenda, which including a call to action through coordination and the creation of strategic partnerships to ensure that Africa's development is inclusive and resilient in line with the 2063 Agenda. The session also highlighted key strategies and approaches to mobilize African financing to implement the priorities of the 2063 Agenda. The main explored themes were domestic resource mobilization and concessional financing and innovative mechanisms to alleviate debt pressure while continuing to finance development on the continent and public-private partnerships for infrastructure development. Let's note that the Minister of Environment, Mrs. Nedjiba Djilali, took part in the discussions in her capacity as representative of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, in the summit of the Committee of Heads of State and Government on Climate Change. The African Heads of State and Government meeting in Addis Ababa as part of the 38th Summit meeting of the African Union have rejected as a blatant violation in international law any proposal or attempt aimed at displacing the Palestinian people from its homeland. In a statement released at the end of their meeting, they strongly and firmly rejected any attempt to liquidate the Palestinian cause, thought the displacement of the Palestinians, including from the Gaza Strip. They recalled that such a plan ran counter the African Union's unswerving position on the Palestinian people's right to self-determination. In this respect, they reiterated the Union's political, economic and financial support to the State of Palestine and stressed the necessity to ensure the political and geographical unity of the Palestinian territories, to include the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. In this connection, the African leaders said that they backed a renewed bid by the State of Palestine to apply for UN full membership so that the Israeli occupying authorities account for the war crimes and crimes against humanity carried out and still perpetrated against the Palestinian people. They, however, deplored the unprecedented support brought by some countries to the Israeli occupying authorities, denouncing the recent atrocities perpetrated against Palestinian civilians and the destruction of properties and infrastructure in Gaza. The African heads of state and government emphasized the necessity to settle the Palestinian issue on the basis of the two-state option in order to reach a global peace in the Middle East region, and urged all EU member states to put an end to the direct and indirect cultural, scientific and trade relations with Israel in accordance with the UN relevant resolutions. King Abdullah II of Jordan has reiterated his rejection of any attempt of annexation of land and any displacement of the Palestinians from the Gaza Strip and the occupied West Bank. Addressing a joint press conference held in Amman with the members of the delegation of the US Congress led by Senator Richard Blumenthal, the Jordanian king stressed that the two-state solution was the only means of ensuring regional security and stability. Evoking the controversial resettlement plan put forth by the US, the representative of the Palestinian Hamas movement here in Algiers, Youssef Hamdan, had the following.
This serious violation threatens the agreement, stripping it out of its security essence and obstructing the humanitarian process, which is a fundamental part of the agreement. Added to this, the occupation prior hesitation in starting negotiations for the second phase indicates its lack of seriousness in adhering to the agreement brokered by mediators and witnessed by the world. The indicators reveal the intentions of the war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu to obstruct prisoner exchange operations, derail the humanitarian process, hinder the ceasefire, and pursue a return to aggression. We warn everyone of the dangers of this systematic behavior, condemn this brutal crime and all violations committed by the occupation regarding the agreement and the humanitarian protocol, and hold all parties responsible for ensuring that the Zionist enemy fulfills all its commitments.
That was the representative of the Palestinian Hamas movement here in Algiers, Youssef Hamdan. Back to national news, the Interior Minister, Mr. Brahim Marad, has held talks with his Tunisian and Portuguese counterparts in Tunis on the sidelines of the 42nd session of the Council of Arab Ministers of the Interior, CMAI. Asabakara reports.
During the talks with the Tunisian Interior Minister, Mr. Khaled Nouri, the two parties hailed the level of bilateral cooperation as well as the remarkable pace of activities carried out over the past year, notably in areas relating to security coordination and the fight against cross-border crime. The two parties also hailed the effectiveness of the bilateral action to develop border areas within the framework of the mechanisms created, reiterating their determination to pursue their joint action in application of the two countries' presidents' political will. The Algerian minister stressed the country's unwavering commitment to continue working together on both the Arab and African levels to eradicate terrorism.
In this context, do not miss being aware that the continuous deterioration of political, security and social conditions in the Sahel region has contributed to the fragility of the current situation, the lack of stability and the reinforcement of terrorist networks which have found a safe haven in the region for their criminal activities. To this effect, curbing this dangerous phenomenon requires intensifying and coordinating efforts at both the national and the regional levels. In this regard, my country has not and will not hesitate to share its successful experience in combating and eradicating terrorism with our Arab brothers. It reaffirms on every occasion its unwavering commitment to continue working together on both the Arab and African levels to eradicate this phenomenon.
On the occasion, Mr. Marad met the Portuguese Minister of Interior, who attended in her capacity as guest of the 42nd session. During the meeting, the two parties discussed the prospects for strengthening bilateral cooperation between the two sectors, notably in the fields of security and combating cross-border crime and illegal migration. The two sides also examined ways and means of activating the bilateral agreement signed between the two countries' civil protection authorities on operational cooperation, and agreed to strengthen bilateral action and exchange expertise in the fight against disaster risks, notably forest fires.
The president of Congo-Brazzaville, Denis Sassou Nguesso, has expressed his fear of a regional war in the east of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where M23 rebels are on the offensive, advocating for dialogue between Kinshasa and Kigali. President Sassou Nguesso stressed that the Africans must remain at the center of the talks. He also suggested that he would be ready to create the conditions for Rwandan President Paul Kagame and the DRC's President Felix Tshisekedi to meet. After seizing the capital of North Kivu, Goma, in a lightning offensive at the end of January, the armed group M23 took control of the capital of South Kivu, Bukavu. The African Union called for the immediate withdrawal of the M23 and its supporters, warning against the balkanization of the DRC and the collapse of the country, with whole areas of the territory now beyond Kinshasa's control. Since the recent intensification of violence, there have been increasing calls from the international community for de-escalation with a ceasefire. Neighbouring Uganda and Burundi as well as South Africa have deployed troops in the region to support the Congolese army. In a statement read recently, the M23 demanded the immediate withdrawal of Burundian soldiers present in South Kivu. Earlier, the British government warned that the capture of a second provincial capital in the east of the Democratic Republic of the Congo by M23 rebels risks triggering a wider regional conflict. The UK called for an immediate cessation of hostilities and a return to dialogue through African-led process or African-led peace processes, stressing that there can be no military solution. Moving to Germany, tens of thousands of people have demonstrated in Berlin, Germany, to protest against the far-right government to the country. The far-right government governing the country. Over 30,000 participants rallied against the Alternative for Germany AfD party a week before the country's general elections. A similar demonstration in Munich on February 8th gathered thousands of people. Another in the German capital Berlin on February 2nd attracted large crowds of protesters. Many of the demonstrators were concerned that the AfD could become Germany's second largest party in the February 23rd parliamentary elections, when the latest polls predicted will take 20 to 25 or to 21% of the votes, behind the conservative opposition, which is expected to take 30 to 32%. With this last piece of news comes the end of our news bulletin. I invite you now to listen to our weekly economic program by my colleague Said Bouhazi. Stay tuned on Radio Algeria International.
Hello and welcome to our weekly program devoted to Algerian economic news. First in the news, the Secretary of State to the Minister of Energy in charge of renewable energies, Noureddin Yessa, has received in Algiers the President and CEO of the Spanish company Colergy, Kirill Layats, who has expressed his company's interest in exploiting opportunities available in Algeria in the field of hydrogen, says a statement from the Energy Ministry. The meeting took place in the presence of central executives. The two parties explored the opportunities for cooperation and investment between Sonatrach and Colergy SL in the field of hydrogen development, especially with regard to its multiple uses, including transport. An information day has been held in Algiers on the launch of the second call for projects on green transition as part of the European Union's Interreg NextMed cross-border cooperation program. The second call focuses on the common challenges facing the countries of the Mediterranean basin, such as climate change, the green and circular economy. The CEO of the Sonatrach Group, Rashid Hashishi, has received a delegation from the Italian energy group Enel Global Trading, led by its director Claudio Macchetti, with whom he examined ways of finding new opportunities for partnership, according to a press release from the group. During the meeting, the two parties discussed ways of enriching the historic trade relationship between the two companies and finding new partnership opportunities in the hydrocarbons value chain. The Sonelgaz Group has received a delegation of executives from the German group Bosch. The two parties agreed to set up a joint working group to examine opportunities for cooperation, according to a press release from the state-owned group. The meeting, which brought together Sonelgaz CEO Morad Edgel and the German delegation, led by the CEO of Bosch Africa, Markus Still, was an opportunity for both parties to express their desire to establish a fruitful and serious partnership between the Algerian group and and the Bosch Group, a leader in a number of fields, including power tools, household appliances, industrial technologies, and artificial intelligence. More in our program. Algeria, Nigeria and Niger have signed agreements in Algiers to speed up the completion of the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline over 4,000 kilometers long, which will allow transporting Nigerian gas to Europe, according to the official APS news agency. The Trans-Saharan gas pipeline is expected to carry billions of cubic meters of Nigerian gas to Algeria via Niger. The gas could then be exported to the European Union via the Transmed pipeline, which links Algeria to Italy via Tunisia, and in the form of liquefied natural gas LNG transported by LNG tankers. The Minister of State, Minister of Energy, Mines and Renewable Energies, Mohamed Arkab, has reaffirmed the importance and strategic dimensions of the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline project as a bridge between Africa and the world, which will give the African continent a central place in the global energy market, reiterating Algeria's total commitment to this project and its determination to work with Nigeria and Niger to make it a reality. Algeria is fully committed to this project and will continue to work with Nigeria and Niger to achieve this great African dream, a new energy future for Africa, one in which our continent will play a major role in global energy security and the development of its peoples, said Mohamed Arkab in his speech at the 4th ministerial meeting of the steering committee of the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline project, with the participation of the energy and oil ministers of Algeria, Niger and Nigeria. A presidential decree authorizing Algeria an additional stake in the capital of the African Export-Import Bank, Afreximbank, in the amount of 2,285 additional shares has been published in the official gazette. The payment of the additional stake will be made from the funds of the public treasury, according to the decree. It should be noted that in June 2022, Algeria acceded to the agreement establishing Afreximbank signed in Abidjan in 1993. And to wind up our program, a delegation of Omani businessmen have visited the Label Group, which specializes in the food industry in the province of Boumerdès, to examine partnership opportunities in this field, according to a press release from the Ministry of Industry. This visit is part of the Omani delegation's working visit to Algeria to strengthen economic ties between Algeria and the Sultanate of Oman, notably in the fields of food security and pharmaceutical industries, and to implement the results of the state visit paid by the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, to Muscat in October 2024, and his guidelines in this regard. And with this, we come to the end of our weekly program devoted to Algerian economic news. Take care and bye-bye for now.
مسافر حب يشوف زين الطبيعة والمنظر مدينة المدينة داير.
Welcome to your weekly program, Destination Algeria. I'm Jamal Silmani. There are a number of great destinations in Algeria just waiting to be discovered. A curious mixture of cultures and influences. Algeria has something interesting to see in just about every city. The country is also the first largest on the African continent, so you can be sure that there are plenty of towns and cities to visit. Let's visit Algeria's fascinating destinations, you and I, together. There are a number of delightful little towns in Algeria that are well worth visiting. One of the lovely coastal towns you might want to know more about is that of Delissa. The rich and fascinating history of Delis in Algeria can be traced back all the way to Roman times. In fact, it can still be seen in the form of a 2nd century Roman ruin that is found near the northern entrance of the old city. Many of the other Roman artifacts found in Delis were taken to other countries and displayed in museums many years ago. Even in Roman times, Delis quickly became a powerful and influential city. It is thought that this original city was destroyed by either an earthquake or an invasion. Either way, the city was then rebuilt by the Arabs who moved to the region for political reasons. During this time, it was called Tiflis. Many centuries later, it was taken over by the Turks and became a part of the Ottoman Empire. During this time, there were many different tribes and peoples living in Delis, and the city continues to prosper. According to Juan Battista Montalbano, an 18th century Italian philologist, Delis was a very prosperous port that was home to a number of rich families. He attributed this wealth mainly to the area's wool and flax dyeing resources. The city went on to become a popular holiday city, with many entertainment and sporting facilities being built. After many years of sovereign rule, Algeria finally took control of its own cities and towns, and so Delis finally became a truly Algerian city. Today, Delis in Algeria is filled with interesting ruins, relics and artifacts. Its diverse history has given it great appeal, while its striking coastal setting and colorful sunsets just cannot be ignored. The Ottoman-era Kasbah is a popular attraction, while the two colonial-era lighthouses continue to stand tall, indicating to ships where they should sail in order to safely make berth at the small port. Farming and fishing continue to be prominent activities here, and there is a distinctly industrious but relaxed feeling in the city. If you feel you'd like to see this town, you'll discover it to be a rich treasure trove of lovely sights.
زينة 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 أرض بلادي زينة 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 أرض جدادي مرحبا بالضيف لي جا زارنا زارنا أرض بلادي مرحبا بالضيف لي جا زارنا أرض جدادي.